All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny McFarland with the Tucson Audubon Society, and we're going to be talking about this year's Desert Purple Martin project. So this is going to be year 2 of our Desert Purple Martin project. We piloted the study last year, and these birds are so understudied, which we're going to talk about specifically in a moment. They're so under um, sort of analyzed at all as a distinct subspecies of purple martin that we had to really figure out what we were doing last summer as we went along. And we had so many terrific volunteers and a couple of staff that were involved that really helped us develop a really great way to review purple martins. And we're going to be expanding the study this summer to have a few more avenues of exploration and different activities. And we're going to talk about where we've been with purple martins, where we're going this summer, and where we're headed into the future, because this is going to be a focus of our desert summer bird surveys into the foreseeable future. They are such interesting birds, and you'll see when we look at distribution maps, they're very much our birds. They're very much Sonoran Desert tied. So this is definitely, we're the group to be looking at them and investigating them and monitoring them. So it's going to be, I think, pretty cool. So let me share my screen here. Screen 2, share sound, share. Okay. So, all right. Is that showing up okay, Luke?
Looks great.
All right. So Desert Purple Martin project. So this is for the second summer, the summer of 2021. And they are such charismatic birds. They're very, very cool. They're very closely tied to saguaro or large columnar cacti, such as cordons in Mexico. But they're here in Arizona, it's the saguaros that they're nesting in. And they are wild. They're wild martins. They don't utilize nest boxes as far as we know, although that is something we'll be investigating in the future to see if we might be able to get them to at least look at nest boxes or try nest boxes. But they've pretty much nest in woodpecker holes in columnar cactus, saguaro, and cordon cacti. They're really cool. So here's a male on the top left. They appear almost black in most lights, very, very dark bird, but in perfect light, you can see the shiny, iridescent purples and blues in their feathers in an adult male. The one on the bottom left is a little female peeking out of a nesting cavity of a saguaro hole, woodpecker hole. And if you have seen purple martins in other parts of the country, it's the females especially that look quite different in this subspecies. They're much, much paler overall, much paler birds than the ones you see in other parts of the country. And this picture on this moving picture on the right, this GIF is of Olia Phillips, who works here at Tucson Audubon, trying to use a pole and endoscope to see inside of a purple martin nest, which is something we're going to talk about quite a bit. So purple martins are very interesting birds. So purple martins as a species, as an entire species, have 3 distinct subspecies that can be found in North America. And our desert purple martins are still purple martins. They're part of this species of purple martin. They're not their own distinct species, but they are a very distinct subspecies that has definitely their own thing going on. But purple martins in general are very interesting birds. And I feel like here in the United States, and it's hard not to feel this way or think this way, that the birds, they come here in the spring, or in our case, kind of the summer. They show up for nesting, they do their thing, and then they just sort of vanish in the autumn. But if you look at the whole life cycle of a purple martin, they operate within an entire hemisphere. There's a lot of great information you can read about the species in general online. They're fascinating birds, but they have a very much of a hemisphere way of operating. So when you look at range maps, sometimes they'll look like this, where it's showing North America. And the orange in this case is where you can find, breeding ranges of purple martins. And the yellow is their migration routes. So they have some breeding and lots of breeding in the eastern half of the United States, up into sort of through southeast Arizona, which are going to be the Sonoran Desert ones, and then up into higher elevations and in the Pacific Northwest in very isolated patches. But from their point of view, a whole year's point of view, they actually operate within the entire Western Hemisphere, where they use the North America as their breeding grounds, but they winter in South America, not even Central America. They go all the way to South America to winter. Quite a long migration. And many swallows have this pattern of wintering in South America and then going all the way to North America to breed and then returning on their annual cycle. And the desert purple martins are so understudied that no one is exactly sure exactly where within this wintering range that they winter. We're pretty sure it's Brazil. We're pretty sure that they nest in Brazil, but we're hoping in the future to get do some very cool, sophisticated studies in the future to learn a bit more exactly where they winter. But right now they think it's Brazil, but it's hard to say for sure. It's definitely in that range somewhere though. So this is a really cool map that you can see on ebird.org. They're providing more and more of these moving abundance maps for lots of species. They keep adding sort of more species every month. And they have done one for purple martin. Now this is for the whole species, but I'm going to click on this and the bar is going to move. This bar that says week of the year is going to move from January through December. So this is an annual cycle map showing the distribution of martins. And so it's color coded from yellow being sort of, around in the smallest numbers all the way up to purple where it's like they're densely present. And so it's going to move through time and density. So let's click on this. There we go. All right. So it's going through the year, and in spring, the East Coast lights up, or the eastern half of the United States. And then once you hit May, June, you get them in Arizona. And then in the winter, they're all over this northern section of South America. So it's pretty cool map. These are so fascinating to watch. I get lost watching these on eBird for different species, but the martin one's particularly good. So they go all the way up to Canada, these western martins. And you can also see, if you watched closely, that the eastern birds arrive much sooner. So here they are in the eastern US, and then they show up at least a month later in the West. So you can really see some distinctive differences in migration behavior happening between these different subspecies. So here they are. Here are the 3 subspecies. I got this map from the National Geographic Birds of North America. I find the maps in that book to be very, very good if you're trying to see where the ranges of subspecies occur. So these maps are very, very detailed for subspecies. And so Subis is the eastern martin, kind of the type martin they would call it. So what most people think of when you say purple martin are the Subis subspecies, and definitely seems to be the most abundant. So they are the ones that you may have seen if you did not grow up in Arizona the way I did. If you grew up in a different part of the country, you may have seen those huge flotillas of white gourds, birdhouses, or the sort of martin hotels with tons of nesting spaces within a large nest box. And it's the Subis birds that use those. It's the ones that occur in the eastern half of the United States that will use those nest boxes and are absolutely embraced and beloved, not just by birders, but by the general public, since they're so charismatic and will nest in people's yards and like these nest boxes. So those are the Subis birds. And then you have the Arboricola subspecies, which is the one that you get in nesting in trees. So they will nest in like ponderosa pine or aspens especially, or in this case, this looks like a snag, a dead tree with a woodpecker hole that a pair is nesting in. And they're pretty cool. You can get them in like the Flagstaff area, in like sort of above the Mogollon Rim in Arizona. You can find Arboricola nesting, and especially in the Pacific Northwest. So they like to go up in sort of sort of coastal Northern California, up into the sort of coastal region of Washington and Oregon, and up into Canada. So and these are birds that will pass through Arizona. We see them on migration coming through in the spring. And then the Hesperia, which is our desert purple martin. Desert nesting purple martin is another term I've seen in literature for them. But they are extremely restricted. You can see this tiny little breeding range. They're here in the Sierra Madre, the mountain ranges in West Mexico. They're in, of course, here, Southeast Arizona, and down into this corner of Mexico where you can get some saguaros, and then going down into cordons, and then in Baja where there's cordons and large columnar cactus that look like saguaros but are not saguaros, very similar to saguaros, like large saguaros, that they use this strategy of nesting in woodpecker holes in large columnar cacti. So quite different from the other 2 subspecies. And these are our desert purple martins. And you can see here from an eBird map that I looked at this morning that they're pretty patchy in the West. Now the breeding map shows that, but to see actual sightings be very, very patchy, where throughout the eastern United States, there are sections without them, but they're pretty distributed throughout the eastern US, and they're incredibly localized in the western United States. Now, purple martins in Arizona is such an interesting thing. I mean, I did grow up in Arizona, and I was not really that aware of martins much at all, but they are here. You can see purple martins in Arizona, and we have the two distinct western subspecies that can be found here. So in the northern part of the US and more of the sort of higher elevation ponderosa pine, we get the Arboricola subspecies moving through, or not nesting, and then we get them seemingly moving through on migration. So I've seen martins in early April coming through in places like the Amato Pond, and those are almost certainly the Arboricola birds passing through southern Arizona to reach breeding ranges further north. So these are some cool photos I got off of eBirds. So in Colorado in late May, here's a nesting female on an aspen tree. And then in Vancouver in June of 2018, some birds using some nest boxes. And Keith was talking about that before we started the recording of them using nest boxes, this sort of western forest purple martin subspecies that will use nest boxes often over saltwater. They seem to prefer that. It's really cool, really interesting birds. I'd love to learn more about them. But right now, I've been working a lot with the desert purple martins. So the Hesperia is the Latin subspecies. So the Prognathisubis hesperia is the subspecies, and AKA desert purple martins. And they're very cool, very charismatic. They love their saguaros, and they hang out on them. Even now, I've been watching them, but they're not breeding quite yet. They're gearing up since the monsoon seems like it's about to happen. So they're gearing up, but they're hanging out on saguaros all through June, sort of staking out what I've started calling saguaro guarding. Just they're very, very closely tied to saguaros. And they are vastly understudied. When I did a literature search, so going into the scientific literature, looking for published articles about purple martins, and specifically about the Prognathisubis hesperia, the desert purple martins, I literally, on Web of Science, which is a major search engine for scientific literature, turned up 6 results total. So, and some of them were just sort of descriptions of parasites and stuff. So definitely understudied by the scientific community. So our work on these birds is very helpful to the larger scientific knowledge of these birds, and a lot of it, I think, is going to be pretty groundbreaking stuff that we're doing. So very, very cool. Now, the one paper that was done that is very much about these birds is this first one that popped up. So it's from 1991, and it's the Coloniality and Breeding Biology of Purple Martins in Saguaro Cacti. And she did do her work. It was by Bridget Stoochberry. It was a very interesting paper. It is, I believe, that you can just get it online, so it must be in the public domain. So I think I'm going to put a link to it on our site. But it's definitely a very interesting paper. It's not very long. It's less than 10 pages. And she did a lot of interesting work, and she did do her work in Tucson. So she was looking for martins and saguaros in West Tucson. And it's very interesting what she found, but it was a 2-year study. So it's relatively limited compared to what we're going to be doing. And the technology in 1991 was quite different from what we have now. And yeah, here's like the abstract of the paper. It's a really good paper, and I think I'm just going to make it available for everyone to look at, since it seems to be freely available online. So the first time Tucson Audubon did work with desert purple martins was relatively by accident. It was on the lower San Pedro River. Back in the day in 2012, I had not been with Tucson Audubon that long, and we were doing a lot of general bird survey work on the San Pedro River. This is up near San Manuel, so kind of on the north side of the Santa Catalina Mountains in the San Pedro River Valley. And we were looking for other stuff. We were doing alfalfa surveys along River Road, which is a road between the riparian zone and the Saguaro Desert Upland Zone. And we were looking to do alfalfa surveys. In the evening, we would see these huge congregations of purple martins on the wire. All of these little dots on these telephone wires are purple martins, desert purple martins. This was in summer, just socializing and hanging out on these wires, just being purple martins, calling and fussing and flying around and being really cool. And this totally blew us away just how many were using this area. So we started trying to do counts of them, and we would go out in the evenings and prime times of year and thought, oh, okay, we'll count maybe 100. This is going to be great. And we go out there and there'll be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them just sitting on the wires and then flying around in the sky to the point where it was very, very difficult to count them. There was so many, and males and females both just hanging out on the wires, preening and just really sort of absolutely intriguing us on these birds, because we hadn't really ever heard that much about them. And here they were in these huge numbers. And they love the San Pedro River. I imagine a lot more areas in Arizona used to look like this, which is probably where they favored nesting, but many of our riparian zones, like we're seeing here. So what we're seeing here in these photos is some martins on saguaros, but also Sonoran Desert upland hills coming right near intact riparian zones. So this is a relatively rare site now in Arizona, but you can still see it in certain sections of the lower San Pedro River up near San Manuel, which is where we took this photo. And this is intact cottonwood willow gallery with adjacent mesquite bosque, and then transitioning into a Sonoran Desert zone. This is absolutely perfect for martins because it has their saguaros that they love so much, the giant saguaros that you can see in the San Manuel area along the San Pedro corridor. Absolutely gorgeous, enormous saguaros. So it's got lots of cavities for them to nest in. And then right nearby is a riparian zone where they can go and find the insects that they depend on, especially to feed their young. Based on what we saw last year, they heavily prey on dragonflies and damselflies to bring to the baby martins back in the saguaro. I mean, you're not going to find that many dragonflies in the desert unless you have adjacent water zones, riparian zones, or like we've seen here in Tucson, adjacent golf courses or something that stands in as a riparian zone. So this is sort of, I would assume, to be the most natural ancient conditions of desert nesting purple martins. More and more rare these days, so they're having to adapt and utilize urban zones, urban water sources. And this is a pond right in the area that we did a lot of bird surveys on the lower San Pedro River near San Manuel. It's on private property, but there's this big pond that is like artesian well fed. It's this really, really interesting area that the martins really love, and they congregate right here. And so all those amazing photos we got of 1,000+ martins hanging out on the telephone wires is directly across from this pond. So they're coming here to bathe and get a little drink of water and hunt for insects and just socialize. So it's sort of like their purple martin heaven, this big pond right along the river and right adjacent to the saguaro desert upland habitat. So very cool birds. And photos do definitely fall short for purple martins. And I was anticipating a lot of new folks being on this talk today. So I have a video I'd like to show you guys. It's just about a minute long. Come on, go big. There we go. Since you really, it's their audio, their sounds that are so interesting too. Your little head out, little female. Pretty much it. So they are very cool birds. I really like purple martins, and they're so charismatic, and they move around so much, and they're such dynamic, good flyers that photos they really do fall short on these birds. Seeing them in person is so much different.
Desert
what is happening? Oh, it's the YouTubes keep going.
This is the first year we're doing
Go away,
these
YouTube.
surveys,
Hush.
so
That's the training video about purple martins. Okay. So So really dynamic birds. And here's another thing too that has been very relevant is that why purple martins? I mean, they're fascinating dynamic birds. They're definitely, their breeding range focuses on where we are, you know, that the sort of the Sonoran Desert of Tucson going south, they're very scarce up in the Phoenix area. It's really their main breeding range is sort of Tucson south and Sonoran Desert. But insectivores in general, swallows in general, of which purple martins are just big swallows, swallows in general, insectivores, aerial insectivores especially, have had a huge decline. So there's this very much conservation issue too, keeping track of these birds as a distinct subspecies, because while the whole population of purple martins, maybe if you look at the data, maybe working one way, these desert martins may have their own thing going on entirely. So watching them is incredibly important. This is from the, you know, that big billion bird study that came out a few years ago, got a lot of press. But the estimation is that there's been a 32% loss, population loss since 1970 of aerial insectivores, and that 2 in 5 barn swallows have vanished. So, and then of course we have all of our issues here in the Sonoran Desert of Southeast Arizona with habitat loss, with Sonoran Desert being converted into urban zones, shopping centers, agriculture. So it's definitely a concern, and it's another good reason for us to be doing this project. So again, so Southwest martins, you do get them here in this sort of Tucson corridor, but look at Phoenix here. There's just hardly any sightings up in Phoenix. They're definitely not found up there very much with breeding, and it seems to be just related to rain levels. There's the Sonoran Desert up in the Phoenix area gets less rainfall. You know, normally it's a natural thing, gets less rainfall than the Sonoran Desert here. Tucson going south through like Sahuarita, Green Valley, down through Nogales, and then of course west into the Altar Valley and into the Tohono O'odham Nation gets just more rainfall than the Phoenix Sonoran Desert. So when you want to monitor martins, and if you're looking at the eastern population, there's a certain protocol that has been developed over many, many years by very many enthusiastic people that have these flotillas of nest boxes where they'll literally just sort of lower the nest boxes to look inside. They can peek into the nest. There's nests that have cameras in them now to get these really cool footage shots of martins sitting on eggs and then babies. So a lot of the protocols for eastern martins talk about taking babies out of the nest and weighing them. None of this is possible in Arizona. Our desert purple martins, it's a totally different situation. They're not using nest boxes, they're up in saguaros, and it definitely makes the birds, I think, more interesting, but it has some challenges for sure. So this is, Olia and myself were the only ones last year who used endoscopes. And so here's Olia on the left with her pole fully extended, it looks like, to its full 30-foot height, trying to get her wireless endoscope into a hole as the martin flies and sits on top of the saguaro. Here's me looking into a saguaro nest. So we had issues with, we sorted out a lot of issues last year. And after a few weeks in, we were very, very good at this, using these poles to look into saguaros. We had to watch out for hazards for sure, uneven terrain. It is summer, so heat is always a concern. We were worried about disturbing the nests. So right here was a nest we encountered of like nighthawks nesting on the ground, lesser nighthawks. The martins themselves would totally lose their minds when they saw us coming with our poles, coming near their nesting saguaros. They would issue alarm calls. Then all their buddies, and sort of, they're kind of loosely colonial, it seems like. So other martins nesting nearby in different saguaros would show up as backup. And they're so small that I wasn't worried about them hurting us or anything, but I didn't want to distress them. So we were trying to work as quickly as possible, get a view inside the saguaro, and then back off as quickly as we could, just so they don't get so stressed out. And then another concern we had was cryptobiotic soil. So this photo here is of that sort of biological soil crust that you see out in nice patches of Sonoran Desert. It's very sensitive. It's very delicate if you like trample it. So we were really trying to avoid that as much as possible. Don't want to hurt it because it takes a long time to develop. And if you disturb it, it is gone for a long time. We also had a lot of challenges last year with rainfall. So the fact we had that non-soon was a huge problem. This is a really cool map that U of A generated. This is from the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. It's a really cool map showing the monsoon zone within the United States, so New Mexico and Arizona. And how this map works is 100% of average. So white zones are areas that received sort of the average amount of monsoonal rain. So kind of a normal amount is white. Now, the more brown you get, the further negative you are from normal. So that's like a negative amount. And then if you go into green and blue, you have above average monsoonal rainfall. So really interesting map. You can get these online. They're really cool. U of A makes them available. And you could see that Tucson area all the way down this sort of I-19 corridor, which is where most of our martins were that we were watching, is in some of it's barely in the white, so close to normal amounts of monsoon rainfall, but most of it's pretty deeply in the brown, so well below average rainfall. We had very little rainfall. Over the past 12 months, we've had like 4 inches when normally it should be 12. So definitely in a pretty severe drought that seems to be affecting many of our species. And boy, did it affect the martins last year from what we could tell. It made it certainly very challenging for us, but it did give us an interesting baseline. So as we move forward and hopefully we'll have a more normal monsoon this summer, we might get different data from what we got last year, which will be very interesting to see how that develops. But it was kind of weird that our first year was one of the driest years on record, especially for monsoon rainfall. So all of our info and results from last year, as well as a lot of information about what's going on with the study this year, is available online. So if you go to the Tucson Audubon website, so that's tucsonaudubon.org, you can go directly to it by /Purple Martin, or if you go to the home page, the menu bar, you have the Get Involved option, then to Citizen Science, and then there's a option there for Desert Purple Martin. That'll take you to it as well. But lots of info right on the website. This is what the page looks like. We have links right there to look at the data from last year. And this is the sort of stuff that we were able to compile with a lot of help from some excellent and dedicated volunteers. We did put together a document of everything that was recorded. We didn't really know how to do this sort of study. So we did the best we could. And we got a lot of really good information. So we almost did it like the protocol I gave people was almost a sort of nature journal, what you were seeing with photos and observational descriptions of behavior you were observing, as well as what nest holes they were nesting in. So it's fascinating, and you can go look at this. It's quite long. It's a lot of observations that a lot of people gathered, and you can just peruse it for yourself and see cool photos and read sort of like observational entries on what people saw. It's very cool. We also made a map of where we encountered purple martins, and this will be the same map we're going to be adding to this summer. We were able to do some analysis on what we got. We did a nesting timing table that Olya put together based on everyone's observations. Very cool. And we're starting to develop this timeline of what weeks we're seeing certain activities, whether they're on nest or carrying food or feeding young or having fledglings. So really trying to create a timeline of when certain breeding codes are happening with these birds. Very cool. And we were able to do some nesting work on trying to determine sort of the average height that they nest at on like their chosen cavities, what direction those cavities face. But we really need a lot more data for this, and we're going to talk about that. For the height, I only had 21 samples last year, and for the direction, 35. So we definitely could use a lot of help here getting some more information. And there's tons of martins nesting on the edges, sort of the Sonoran Desert around Tucson, both east and west, to the north, quite a lot to the south through Sahuarita and into Green Valley. So a lot of good places to go look for these birds and get some data. We have lots of detailed info we've put in spreadsheets from last year. So even for a pilot study, we did quite a lot. We were able to do a really interesting preliminary analysis of the data we gathered, and we're really hoping to build upon that with more data this year. So we have a pretty ambitious plan for this coming summer, for July and August coming up. So our 2020 survey plan, this looks like a lot, and it is. We're going to go through them one by one. So we're going to be doing an eye button temperature study. That'll be headed up by Tucson Audubon staff, but I do want you guys to be aware of all the different things that are happening, even though staff are handling a couple of them. Sound recorders will also be headed up by staff, but we're also going to be doing, this is where we need your guys' help, general sightings. So this can be either through eBird or through our online form. And I'm looking both for information on where birds may be nesting, like hanging out near saguaros, as well as where they may be roosting. So hanging out socially, maybe near a water source, such as like a golf course pond or anything like that, or gathering on wires and just sort of hanging out in trees, that kind of thing. Definitely need information on that. It can be happening through the breeding season, pre-breeding season, and it's like very much it happens. We've documented it quite a lot happening in the autumn, so late August into September as the birds get ready to migrate. We are really hoping to get some feather or specimen collection help from you guys, as well as just from the birding community. Anybody who finds a dead purple martin, boy, do we want to know about it. We're hoping to do a live camera stream practice run, and I'm going to talk about that. We'd love to get like a camera on an active nest. There's definitely some challenges with that though. We need some help doing data gathering on saguaro sites and nesting holes, sort of like what's the height of a cavity, the direction it's facing. And then monitoring of active nesting holes and reporting behaviors such as carrying food. So that's what we mostly did last year was, volunteers adopted a saguaro, they went out to it a lot, maybe once a week, and just took information, gathered observations on what they were seeing the birds doing. And then for the first time, we're going to be doing endoscope training and making endoscopes available for volunteers to utilize to look into active purple martin nesting holes. So pretty ambitious plan, but we'll go through them quickly one by one. So our iButton plan is to these little tiny devices, and there are these little metal things, and they're very small. Here's a photo of someone holding one in their hand. They're little tiny devices, but they record temperature and humidity conditions through time. So we have them set up to record a data point every 15 minutes. They can do that for a very long time. So we will be putting them into saguaro cavities and leaving them there through July through August. Just leave them there. We're not going to go back for them until after the birds have left the saguaro. So we don't want to disturb them. Once we put them in, we're just going to leave them. And we're going to be doing a paired cavity study. So we'll be putting them in cavities that we think they're going to nest in based on what happened last year. And then also put them in cavities of the same saguaro that we think they're not going to nest in, so we can compare the two. And we're also going to put some in some artificial wooden nest boxes and see just how the conditions compare between an artificial nesting area and a saguaro. Since presumably they will be different, but we'll have data to report from you, for all of you at the end of the summer. We're also going to be doing some sound recorder work. So these are electronic devices. We've used them on a lot of species. Purple martins definitely meet the criteria that we've developed over time on when using this technology works. They're really cool. They're basically a giant electronic box that has batteries in it and microphones and a SD card. And you can program them to turn on at certain times and just record ambient sound. They don't make any sound. They don't try to like goad birds into calling back. They just record ambient sound as you program them to. And so we're going to tell them to turn on at like 4 a.m., turn off at 9 a.m., then turn on again for 2 hours in the evening, that kind of thing. And we'll be leaving these near, nesting colonies. And we're looking for a couple things. I want to know if they change their vocalizations as the breeding season goes on. And I also would just like to gather some nice recordings of these desert purple martins, since they're incredibly underrepresented on websites like Xenocanto, where you can go and download bird calls from birds all over the world. There's lots and lots of recordings of the eastern martins, and we'd love to get some more up of these desert martins. And these recorders take such high quality recordings that we'll get some good stuff to put up and then share with the larger science and birding community. So that's part of the reason we're doing this. And I have these devices, so they're pretty fun to put out. And martins make a lot of noise, which is one of my main criteria for when this technology can work to analyze, to sort of gather data on a species. The next thing that we had on our list is just reporting. So we really need as much help as possible from anybody who sees purple martins, in the next few months, next 3 months. If you see purple martins at all, anywhere in Arizona, especially Southeast Arizona, please report them on eBird or on our own form. We made our own form for those who don't use eBird, but eBird's great. It's free and it's really easy to use. They have an online interface as well as a free app that you can use. And breeding codes are especially important. If you are seeing purple martins carrying food or something like that, nesting in a saguaro, you can use these breeding codes to record that in the data. You can write a description of behavior. There's lots of space to put details. You can put photos in eBird. So if you're seeing purple martins, reporting them is incredibly helpful. And you can do it directly to eBird, which means then anybody can utilize it, all researchers, and we will be checking eBird frequently for information. Or you can get it to us directly through our Google form online. We are very interested in getting specimens or feathers of these birds. We are partnering with Northern Arizona University, and a scientist up at NAU is doing lab analysis on purple martins, on desert purple martins especially. And they're looking for a few things. They're looking for pesticide or heavy metals that could be in the feathers. Many birds, including purple martins, molt on the wintering grounds. So they grow their feathers. These adult birds grow their feathers on the wintering grounds. So there's especially concern of heavy metal exposure and pesticide use down in the wintering grounds that could be affecting the health of these birds, which would then show up in their feathers. So there's going to be some really interesting lab analysis that happens with any adult purple martins we find that have perished or any feathers we're able to gather. And they're also looking to do perhaps some stable isotope analysis, which is really cool lab technology that can give you insight onto exactly where that feather grew, like where in the world that feather grew. So that would give us some insight onto where they're wintering, and maybe even some genetics work if they're able to get viable DNA. So this was a purple martin that Keith Wiggers found near on his property. It was an adult male that sadly had somehow come to be impaled on a cholla. So we got that bird. It has now up at NAU and it is being analyzed. It's in the lab right now. And this is the very first adult desert purple martin that has been analyzed in this way. So it's very, very exciting. And we'd love to get some more. Oli and I also did find two, sadly, I think this is related to how poor the monsoon was last year, two dead chicks on the ground at the base of saguaros that are also being analyzed. But it's these adults that are especially what we need, since they're the ones who grew those feathers in the wintering grounds. So if you see a dead purple martin, my goodness, please let me know. If you see on a Facebook group page, someone who's not really a birder, oh, I've got this dead blue bird in my yard, please put me in contact with them. We really would love to find another adult purple martin to send off to the lab. We're really hoping to do a live stream of a nest. So this is technology we've been using quite a lot. We've done live streams of, like this one right here on the right is the patent yard cam. We've done it on nest boxes very successfully. And we would love to do this on a saguaro. We're hoping to do this like for real, for like in a really serious way in the future, but I'd love to try to do a trial run this year to see if we can sort out the logistics of doing this year. So it would be on the outside of a nest, not inside a nest like we did with the screech owls. It'd be more like this patent cam where it's sort of pointing at a saguaro with an active nest. We don't want to disturb the saguaro at all and get in. We don't want to hurt the cactus at all. So it'd be from the outside, and we could get maybe data on what different insect prey items the parents are bringing to the nest. Huge outreach potential in terms of getting the public interested in these birds, the general public. And I really need help looking for a suitable location, because our cameras need a power source. So they need to be close enough to a power source that an extension cord could power the camera, and they need to have Wi-Fi available. So if you know of such a suitable location, if you have, a saguaro in your own yard, that's say 50 to 75 feet from your home or something like that, or from a power source, a Wi-Fi source, please do let me know, because I'm really hoping we have several cameras available to try to get a stream set up this summer. And then of course we'll be doing saguaro and nest observations. This is sort of the height of, this was the top tier of what we had volunteers doing last year, and we're going to continue it this year, where we love to get saguaro and nest observations. More documented nesting cavities would really help our analysis on what direction the cavities tend to be, the height they tend to be, just gathering, so we can start drawing maybe some conclusions on what the purple martins like in their nesting. So we really need more documented nesting cavities, and it would really help our data analysis. Even just one visit of doing this, of finding some nesting saguaros that have active nests, and recording how high the hole is, exactly which hole it is. Like these are some examples from that people did last year, showing some screen drawing of taking a photo of the saguaro. This is the hole they were nesting in. It's this height. It faces 26 degrees on the compass. Like that kind of information is incredibly valuable. We're also looking to do a site fidelity study over time to see if they use not just the same saguaro, but perhaps even the same hole year to year, or do they move around? We're not really sure. The only other study that was done on this by Bridget Stoochberry, that paper that was done in 1991, she did a 2-year study as like a graduate student at U of A. So she did a 2-year study and that was it. Now she did have site fidelity within those 2 years, but does it go longer than that? Like we'd love to know. So we have to know exactly which hole they're nesting and then the characteristics of that hole. So even if you only have a little bit of time, or if you're hiking in, Tucson Mountain Park and you see a nesting saguaro with, saguaro with martins nesting in it, gathering that information just on that one visit is incredibly helpful to our study. So this is sort of a, not a huge commitment, but in terms of time, but incredibly helpful information. And then this was the sort of the top tier if we did with volunteers last year. And we had such good information that over 40 participants helped us with last year in 2020. And this was observing nests over time. So this was finding a saguaro that had nesting martins and really keeping track of it, maybe visiting it once a week, several times a month. I had a few volunteers that visited several times a week since it was near their homes. Whatever you're able to do is incredibly helpful. So we did identify 63 nesting saguaros this way and had additional 30 nesting areas where we were able to sort of determine that they were nesting in the area, but didn't figure out the exact saguaro. And then 20 plus roosting sites. So incredibly good information. And there was a lot that could be determined by volunteers just by watching from the outside. So this person, this was really, really great observations done on this Sienna site where keeping track of which holes they were seeing them in. And then here, of course, is a baby looking out of a saguaro hole. It's getting really close to fledging. So that gives us some good information on, when this bird's fledged, you can sort of count backwards from when they may have hatched. So all this great information when these adults are carrying food, bringing it to the babies. So there's quite a lot of good data we got just from watching from the outside. But this year, Oli and I had such success with doing endoscope work last year. We want to make this available to volunteers who are very interested, who want to go through the steps of doing the training and then using this equipment on their own nesting saguaros. So last year it was only Tucson Audubon staff. We do have a permit to do this. So Arizona Game and Fish has granted us a permit, and this will be something that I already sorted out with Game and Fish, that anybody who does the training, who completes the training, will be added to the permit. So you would be permitted to do this, like officially permitted to do this activity as well. I have 4 sets of poles and endoscopes right now that are ready to be loaned out. Based on interest, I can get more, and I will get more if a lot of people want to do this. Very meaningful data, and boy, was it a lot of fun. It was frustrating at times and difficult, especially once it starts to get hot, but it was so rewarding. And we got lots of really cool information, looking inside saguaros. We could see things such as this, like we could actually age. And we do have this available for all of you, a purple martin aging guide to look at. This is from information from our partners of Purple Martin Conservation Association from the Eastern United States. They have this great information on exactly what purple martin babies look like on each day of their life. So we have that available for all of you. And this is the sort of stuff we were seeing. This is when you peek inside, you can see the mama with the eggs or the little pink babies, fledgling, young ones that are getting quite purple martin looking almost ready to go. And then one that probably fledged the next morning, like definitely it looks like an adult little bird now. So we will be having our workshop. If you would like to train on how to use this equipment and practice using it, and then we'll sort out how we're going to do, people pick up areas and how to check them out. And so that we can get as much use out of this equipment as possible. This is totally optional. You can help with this project without taking this step. But if you would like to take this step, it would certainly give us a lot more data. And I think it's a lot of fun, especially if you spent all last summer watching saguaros with nesting martins and just wish you could know what was happening inside. Now you can. So our workshop will be Tuesday, July 6th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. It will be at the Tucson Audubon Mason Center. There are some active nests in that area, but we'll be practicing first with saguaros that don't have active nests and maybe then spend some time looking at an active nest. And you guys, anyone who completes the workshop will be added to the Game and Fish as well as the National Park Service permit. Park Service has also issued us a permit to do this in Saguaro National Park East and West. This would now give you the totally legal right to be doing this within the national park. And the Game and Fish permit gives us the right to do it anywhere in the state where you have the right to be on that land. So whether it be your own private property, so this is then a permitted activity that Game and Fish has authorized you to do. It does require a smartphone or a tablet that has Bluetooth. These endoscope cameras do communicate via Bluetooth to a smart device, whether it be a phone or a tablet. And we will make the link to sign up for this workshop available to you all directly after this presentation. It'll go out in the email, and I'm also going to get it up on the Tucson Audubon website. So anybody watching the recording will have the ability to sign up for that workshop. And I will have equipment that people can check out and use. So you don't have to buy anything yourself. And what's coming? We got a lot. We have an exciting future coming for the Desert Purple Martin work. We are partnering with the Altar Valley Conservation Alliance. So we're going to be looking at purple martins using the Altar Valley, which there's been a little bit of eBird data, but there's a lot more to be discovered out there. So we'll definitely, that is definitely an area that they use within their breeding range, which is such a restricted area that the Altar Valley is a significant part of that. So we'll be doing a study in partnership with the Altar Valley Conservation Alliance out there. It'll be very, very interesting to see what we find out in that habitat. We are partnering right now with NAU for the lab work, but in other aspects too of the study. University of Manitoba has been a partner. And then of course, the Purple Martin Conservation Association has been a valuable partner. Now as a coalition, we did apply for a Disney Conservation Fund grant. And if we get that grant, we won't know until after the summer. I think they report back. We did apply last year, and we don't hear back, I don't think, until this autumn. So when we do hear back, hopefully we got it. And if we did, then we'll have quite a lot of funds to do an even bigger effort over the next several years from now. And there's also this really fun thing that happened where the Purple Martin Conservation Association did a story in their newsletter magazine about these desert efforts. We were the cover birds. This is a desert purple martin on the cover of their magazine. And they did a lovely article about these martins themselves, these desert martins, which many of their East Coast members and fans may not have even been aware that there's a subspecies of purple martin that nests in the desert in saguaros. So that was pretty cool. And it is a lovely cover story. So we do have a PDF of this available on our website, and I'll double check that it's available, but we do have it, and it's a really fun read. So it's kind of fun that this is getting a lot of traction because it is a fascinating thing. It's hard these days to find a bird that hangs out in the United States that's so understudied. So a lot of fun, exciting work to be done into the future. So it's gonna be good. Last year was a success, and we're just hoping to expand it for this year. So I am ready for questions. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I can see all of you lovely people.
Thanks, Jenny. It's awesome. I know that there'll probably be some other questions that come up, but we do have two that maybe you can shed some light on. Question was nano tags. Do we ever use nano tags, or will we be using nano tags to see where they migrate?
What a good question. That is in the grant for the Disney Conservation Fund. So that was one of the things we asked for support on. Is those tags are very expensive. So for those who aren't aware, we're talking about little tiny technology that you can put on a bird, like a little backpack. They wear it like a little backpack, and it's on their backs, and it tracks their movements throughout a year. So sometimes on bigger ones for larger birds, they connect directly with satellites, so you can get in real time where they are. For a bird this size, it would more likely be ones that just track GPS points, and then you have to get the device back from them. So you'd have to, that's another reason site fidelity is important to understand. You have to get the bird again and then take the device off of them and download the data. So yes, we are looking to do that. Tucson Audubon has never done that kind of high level technology bird science work before. We're hoping to, and that is if we get the Disney grant, it'll happen for sure.
How much do those nano tags cost?
They are very expensive. So that's part of the reason. They're like, I'm not even kidding, they're thousands of dollars each, up into the $5,000 range each.
Okay.
Right now. Now, over time, they've gotten less expensive and more effective, more efficient in terms of their battery life, but they're still awfully pricey. Another thing we've been looking into is Modis towers. This is a lot to explain right now, but if you Google it, it's fascinating technology. It's Modis, where they're like antennas that you put up that can then connect to a tag that you put on a bird or an animal. People are putting them on bats, even as small as dragonflies. People are putting these tags on them, and they connect to the tower. They kind of ping off a Modis antenna, and then that tracks where that bird or that tag, whatever it's connected to, has passed within so many kilometers of the tower. We already are in process of putting up 2 towers right now. And hopefully in the future, not this year, but in the future, we'll be hopefully putting some tags on martins. And those are smaller. They're pretty pricey too, but they're lighter weight and certainly less of a burden on the birds to wear because they're much smaller devices.
Yeah, that's cool. There's also a question about, let me get back up to that question to make sure I say it right. It had to do with the bird genoscape project. I don't know if you know anything about that project, but do you know if that project has data on desert purple martins?
I'm not familiar with the Genoscape project, and now I'm going to learn more about it because if they are collecting data, we will give them some data on martins. I will look into that. I'm not familiar with that.
Let's see.
It's a question about competition between birds, and it's interesting because martins. When I was really sat down and thought about this, and I'd love anyone's input who also thinks about these things. I can't think of any other migratory bird in Arizona that nests in the Sonoran Desert during the monsoon. Like some residents do, like Gila woodpeckers will maybe do additional nesting clutches during the monsoon maybe, but I couldn't think of any other migrant using the Sonoran Desert in the monsoon. Like we get migrants that come here for the monsoon, like you get, varied buntings in the grasslands or, like in the foothills, and you get, cuckoos in the riparian. But I couldn't think of anything else that comes to the desert to breed in the monsoon. So if anyone else can think of one, let me know. I have seen martins battle woodpeckers a little bit. I've also seen them fight with brown-crested flycatchers. And weirdly, I've seen them fussing with house finches especially coming after martins, even though the house finches don't nest in the saguaros. I don't know. House finches seem a little aggressive towards martins. But I think the timing is just different enough that the flycatchers have mostly wrapped up by the time the martins nest. The woodpeckers have mostly wrapped up, that there's less competition. Now, I did see last year a big saguaro that had a nesting pair of purple martins using one hole and Gila woodpeckers using another hole, and they were getting along just fine. So I think there's hopefully enough holes to go around, but if it was an area that was limited, they probably would fight for them.
Elf owls done nesting by that time?
Elf owls are done, yeah. They wrap up in like, May, June.
Yeah.
They usually leave by, the end of summer.
Right.
With their grown young. Yeah, they're nesting in spring.
Yeah. Yeah, and Joe mentions that the Genoscape project is not currently collecting data on martins. So for what that is worth, thank you, Joe. Marie had a question about if she attended the endoscope training, do you expect a long-term commitment, like making weekly observations, or is it a one-time commitment?
Whatever you'd like. You're welcome to come to the training. If you want to check out a pole and just use it for a few days and bring it back, with the endoscope, that's fine. Whatever you'd like. So the training, the more the merrier for the training. And if you want to be checking your nests a lot, or if you just want to check them maybe twice throughout the summer, either way, that's super helpful information. Getting a photo of what's happening inside a nest, even if you just do it once, is incredibly helpful in terms of us trying to figure out the timing of these birds. So let's say you get, like I showed that photo with the little pink chicks. We could figure out, okay, those chicks look like they're between, 7 and 10 days old. That gives us a huge amount of information about what was going on with that nesting pair, that they laid probably in this date span. Yeah, so even if you want to just use it a couple times or even once, or if you want to try to use it every week, the equipment, either is incredibly valuable to us.
Awesome. Good. Let's see. Any other questions that y'all have? If you do have a question, you can take yourself off of mute and ask Jenny at this time too. I'll just say that during the Southeast Arizona Birding Festival, Jenny and Ole will be doing a couple purple martin field trips, one on Thursday, one on Sunday. I believe the Sunday one is already full, but the Thursday one still has room. And I think you'll be using endoscopes there too to kind of show people what that.
And we'll be gathering real data on those field trips.
Yeah, yeah. So that'll be another option for you. And cool. Any last thoughts, Jenny?
I will be reaching out to anyone who was on this talk with sort of a follow-up on where to find information. So we're going to have a sign-up link to sign up for the endoscope workshop. And I also have a sign-up link for anyone who wants to sort of just join the crew and get updated, since a lot of us can be doing this work without an endoscope. There's a lot of data we can gather without it. So anyone who has submitted sightings on our form, or I have a form too, just to report a nest that you found. And all those links are on that tucsonAudubon.org/Purple Martin page. If you click join the team, that takes you to the page with all the protocols and sort of, inside baseball information that we need as surveyors. It's all posted there. And I'll be reaching out to anybody who uses those forms to sort of make you part of the Desert Purple Martin crew. So we'll be doing updates, and I will be very much looking forward to quickly getting results and information to you guys first before we release it out to our general audience at the end of the summer.
Awesome. All right. Well, and we'll send those links over to you all later this afternoon. Why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and tell Jenny thank you. It's always good to hear it verbally. And then we'll close up for the afternoon.
Thanks,
Thank
Jenny.
you, Jenny.
Thank
you, Jenny.
Oh, thank you guys. You're a great audience.
Thank you,
Thank you all
Jenny.
for helping.
Thank you, Jenny.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks again, Jenny. And to all of you, we'll see you again soon.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
for hosting, Luke. Thank you.